With us, a 10-day ceasefire has been agreed between Israel and Lebanon. US President Donald Trump claimed the news from Washington. Firing will start from midnight Middle East time, Beirut, Jerusalem. Iran's proxy group Hezbollah is the target of Israel's bombardment since March the 2nd. Lebanon, where Hezbollah acts as a state within a state, has been dragged into the conflict and the humanitarian disaster that it has provoked. An hour after Trump's declaration came word from Hezbollah that they would respect the ceasefire if Israel stops its attacks. So Hezbollah, considered a terror group, hasn't been party to the recent Israel-Lebanon talks which took place in Washington. Let's bring in our correspondents to get the reaction and the analysis. First, Noga Tarnopolsky joining us from Jerusalem. Noga, give us the reaction where you are.
Well, Prime Minister Netanyahu has finally issued a statement just about 3 minutes ago, Mark, after long hours in which Israelis hadn't heard a single thing from their government regarding a ceasefire that will impact their lives enormously. And the Israeli Prime Minister is framing this as an opportunity for a sustainable peace. That's what he called it, a sustainable peace between Israel and Lebanon. And he claimed that Israel had rejected several Hezbollah demands for this ceasefire, including the withdrawal of Israeli troops from Lebanon and something that he called quiet for quiet, unclear. But the fact remains that Prime Minister Netanyahu was forced to accept this by Donald Trump. It's not really being hidden here in Israel. Netanyahu's ministers are furious because he didn't bring this to a cabinet vote. I believe knowing that he had little chances of winning the vote. And if a cabinet vote had been held, it would have been binding. So Netanyahu apparently accepted Trump's decision on his own. And the north of Israel, the leaders of the north, the mayors and the citizens feel completely betrayed because they were promised that the Israeli military would crush Hezbollah, would leave it in smithereens, unable to threaten them. And given the fact that missiles have been falling even just in the last hour, that's evidently untrue.
So just going over that point, you're saying Hezbollah firing missiles even in the last hour?
Yes, Hezbollah has actually reduced its launches, but has been firing throughout the day. I think over 30 launches today. And these are all launched from basically central Lebanon, so north of this security swath of Lebanon that that Netanyahu mentioned quite a bit, a security zone that he said had been enlarged by Israel and would protect the north. In any event, Hezbollah launches missiles from north of this area, and they land on Israeli communities just across the border. That has not stopped, and the Israel Defense Forces actually just issued a warning in the last hour or so, saying that they expected Hezbollah to intensify these barrages ahead of the ceasefire coming into play.
Noga, stay with us. Let's bring in Fraser Jackson. Fraser, observing all matters for us in Washington. Fraser, great to have you with us on what is a really big occasion, isn't it? Trump grabbing the headline with the announcement. Is there substance behind the words, Fraser? Is this something that will last? Will things change on the ground? That's one of the big questions, isn't it? But what's the kind of take there where you are in Washington?
Yeah, I think the mood here really is that Donald Trump has changed his mind as to this ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon. It was seen as a kind of missing piece of the puzzle of part of the wider ceasefire between Iran and the United States. Of course, the Iranians have long said that they wanted the Lebanon ceasefire to be part of this deal, but J.D. Vance and Donald Trump said that there was a misunderstanding with the Iranians in the early days of the ceasefire that the US has with Iran, that the ceasefire with Lebanon would be included. Well, of course, now the US administration has backtracked on that, and seemingly Donald Trump has changed his mind and openly pressured Netanyahu to accept these terms. And as we heard there from Noga, even declaring this ceasefire online on Truth Social before the Israeli cabinet could discuss it, and almost kind of forcing Netanyahu's hand here as well. We're also hearing more from Donald Trump, who is gaggling at the moment. He's just about to leave for Las Vegas, and he's talking with the press, with the White House press pool at the moment. And there are some major things coming out of what Donald Trump is saying here. Forgive me for reading off my screen here, Mark, but this is just coming out as we are on air. Donald Trump is saying now that he's spoken to the Iranians, and the Iranians have agreed to give up the enriched uranium. That, of course, was one of the main stumbling blocks of this peace deal. Donald Trump is also saying that Iran has agreed that they will not have a nuclear weapon, at least for the next 20 years. Again, that was another major hang-up of these talks that we saw in Islamabad that ultimately failed last weekend. Donald Trump saying that there could likely be more discussions now in Islamabad with the Iranians this weekend. So this is some major breaking news here. If indeed this is true, Donald Trump saying that the ceasefire between Iran and the US probably does not need to be extended because he says Iran is willing to do things today that they previously weren't. So this has not been confirmed yet by the Iranian side, and it has not been announced yet by the Pakistani mediators. But Donald Trump, they're saying some major things there that the Iranians will be willing to do. But of course, we have to check that this is a fact, because Donald Trump is known to publicly pressure people to try to get his way, as we just saw with Netanyahu a few hours ago. But if true, that is major breaking news there coming from the American president.
And as you say, with Trump on his way to Las Vegas, this represents a major roll of the dice for the US president, does it not? Question to both of you, Fraser, and to you, Noga. Does this mean that Israel and the US are actually on the same page with what happens next in the Middle East? Or are we really reading into what is going on here, some kind of discord? Noga, you first, please.
It's really hard to answer you. I think it's a combination. Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu appear to genuinely get along very well personally, but the interests of the two nations are diverging. And more importantly, perhaps, the interests of these two gentlemen are diverging. This war is very unpopular for Donald Trump, and he's responding to pressure in the United States, whereas Netanyahu is being seen in Israel as someone who failed to achieve any of his stated aims to this war. Didn't get rid of Iran's ballistic missiles or their capacity to make them, hasn't gotten rid of the nuclear or the enriched uranium in Iran. Clearly, what Fraser just announced to us, basically in live reporting, would possibly change that. But for now, Iran remains a nuclear threat, and he hasn't eliminated the threat of Hezbollah. So Israelis, many Israelis, especially in the north, wanted to see this war continue. And I have to underscore, Netanyahu has told his people for years now that there are no diplomatic solutions, that any diplomacy is tantamount to capitulation, and that only military might can get Israel bulletproof protection. As a result, his switcheroo tonight, announcing to Israelis that he had accepted this ceasefire from Donald Trump because it's an historic opportunity for a sustainable Israeli-Lebanese peace, is going to come as something of a shock, especially for his more diehard followers who weren't expecting this.
Noga, as you're speaking, quotes coming in from Netanyahu saying that Trump told him that he's determined to continue the blockade of Hormuz and dismantle Iran's nuclear capabilities. But going to you, Fraser, and thank you for being with us. Trump saying at the right time that he would visit Lebanon. Like you say, he's on his way to Las Vegas right now, but he says at the right time he would visit Lebanon. And he says also that the Lebanese government will be working with Hezbollah. Now, these are a series of big things that Trump is actually saying. Give us your take, Fraser.
They are major things, Mark. That is a really big discussion to be had, and clearly it's not known whether that was something that he discussed with President Joseph Aoun on the phone earlier. But Donald Trump saying that the Lebanese government will be working with Hezbollah during this ceasefire agreement. He's also saying that he would go to Lebanon at the right time. I think it's fair to say that is quite far off from where we are right now. But what is more realistic is the meeting of Netanyahu and and Joseph Aoun here in Washington at the White House. Donald Trump saying that could take place over the next week or two. So, of course, this 10-day ceasefire, which goes into effect at midnight tonight, local time, Donald Trump saying that there could be a meeting on the cards between the leaders of the two countries in the next week or two. So, again, major news there. Donald Trump going really out on a limb here in this gaggle outside of Marine One. But obviously there is very big things still to discuss. Donald Trump saying that the US is still very close to a deal with Iran. And I think really Donald Trump's appetite to get this conflict with Iran over is what is really driving the news here and driving the developments that we're seeing between Israel and Lebanon and also towards the peace talks more widely as well.
Fraser Jackson in Washington, Noga Tarnopolsky in Jerusalem, thank you both so much for giving us the context, but also the breaking news coming out, which Fraser giving us there from Washington. Trump saying that Iran agrees to surrender all enriched uranium and no nuclear bomb for at least 20 years. 10-day ceasefire agreed between Israel and Lebanon. Hezbollah to respect that, although Noga revealing that rockets still being fired. And Trump saying that a possible visit to Lebanon is on the cards and the Lebanese government is to work with Hezbollah. A number of developments there. Thanks again to our correspondents, Fraser Jackson in Washington and Noga Tarnopolsky in Jerusalem. Thank you both.